But before we get started, Holly, it's time for this week's Joke of the Week.
Yeah, so, I used to have a job making furniture out of plants, and I will tell you, it is no bed of roses.
This week's joke is brought to you by Rescue.com.
American-made Rescue products keep your family, home, and yard protected from pest insects like wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, flies, ants, and more. Learn more at Rescue.com. That's RESCUE.com.
Watering is one of the key aspects of life in your garden. Obviously, you need to have good, fertile, rich soil. Then you need water in order to allow the nutrients to be uptaken by the plant and the plant to grow successfully. Now, watering in the garden is much more in-depth than, I splashed some water with the hose, or I really quickly went through the watering can and it looks wet on top, so we must be good. That is the farthest thing from a successful hydration property that you can get. Just because it's wet on top, that means nothing.
Right. And actually, so our 10-year-old nephew had some plants that he obtained recently, a watermelon.
We still don't know where or how, because nobody seemed to ask that question when the conversation was had. But anyway.
I know the watermelon came from his school.
Okay.
So anyway, a tomato, a watermelon, and a cabbage plant. And maybe he'll have more. We'll have to give him some seeds. But I was there at his house, and I gave him some advice on watering, and he was so cute. He was like this little stressed out gardener, and he had to unplug the hose and then turn the water on and put it in his watering can, and it was cute.
So you instructed him on the proper amount of watering that the plant would need in order to be healthy.
For now, yes. Yeah. I forgot to mention, we'll talk about this if you have containers in the summer, in the heat of the summer. But yeah, so you want to keep a schedule. And I did tell him that you want to water regularly, but there was some rain coming up soon, and I said that he probably won't have to water those days, but other than that, he's going to have to water regularly.
There isn't a position in which you can overwater a plant. You can waterlog it. You can turn it into a swampy bog, which will inhibit the plant growth because plant roots need oxygen. Oxygen is in the soil. It also needs water. If you prohibit the oxygen from getting to the roots, the plant will suffocate. There's specific plants that can grow in those wet, boggy areas and are conditioned to do that by nature. Your tomato plants, your bean plants, your watermelons, those aren't those.
Right. Yes, exactly. So you want to keep in mind what plants that you want to be aware of not drowning them, essentially.
Which is pretty much everything you're growing in your backyard or your front yard. In your garden, you're not going to be growing cattails or moss or anything like that.
Maybe rice.
Rice, yeah.
Cranberries.
People can't.
They flood the bogs to get the cranberries.
Right. They don't grow it in a swamp. Now rice, you flood in order for it to grow.
So
you can do this in your backyard, but many choose not to. They grow what we would consider the traditional vegetables.
So speaking about growing or keeping a watering schedule, water consistency, irrigation is very helpful for that. A lot of people are like, that's so costly, and I can just stand out there with my hose.
No,
and
you can't.
Blah, blah. And that's cute and fun for a while, but then I think you are going to want irrigation. It's pretty foolproof. It's a really great investment, especially if you are in a situation where you're going to consistently have the ability to irrigate. Also, if you think about this, okay, if you are somebody who leaves town over a weekend, blah, 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 during summer, you can set it on a timer. Some of these even have like apps.
Wi-Fi, whole deal.
Yeah.
Dripworks.com is what we have used for a number of years. Go ahead.
Or, if you have a neighbor and they have to check on, maybe they're going to check on your mail or whatever, your cat, whatnot, they can also check on your irrigation for you too.
You can set this up, set it and forget it. If you think that you do not need irrigation, you would be absolutely amazed of how much water it takes for dry soil to become hydrated again. Whether it's in a 5-gallon bucket or a root maker grow bag or a root maker raised bed or your traditional raised bed, when that soil is desert dry, it takes gallons, 50, 60, 70. It takes gallons of water in order to get that from a hydrophobic, which repels water, to a hydrational phobic. I don't know to get it to hydrate in order to absorb the water. Once you get the soil to a level in which it will absorb the water, it is now conditioned to absorb moisture as it is presented moisture. When you get it completely dry, it is a very difficult task. It can be done, but to get that back to where you need to. You can also use products like Soil Moist, which helps, and you can incorporate into your soil a moisture retention mechanism that is natural, that will help and last many years in your garden as well, or your containers. You can use weed fabric or weed barrier as well as mulch, those two in combination, in order to hold moisture in. They will suppress weeds, that is true, but in this application, you're creating a barrier to prevent or slow down evaporation of moisture in your garden. If you have an irrigation system like we do, we put the weed barrier on top and we put mulch on top of that weed barrier in order to protect the soil. Because if you just have weed barrier and just have a few holes cut for your tomatoes, your rose plants, rose bushes, whatever, it's not going to hydrate. It's not going to get the moisture it needs. So you need to have that irrigation underneath your weed barrier. Time of day.
Absolutely. So time of day. So this is especially important during the hotter periods of the year. So like July, August, even September.
Any time of year.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, yeah. So you just want to make sure that you aren't watering in the middle of the day. That is probably the worst time.
If you're not irrigating, like if you're not drip irrigating underneath mulch or something.
Yeah.
If we're just going, that rainbow splash, that above ground watering is what I'm referring to. The evaporation is much more than if it was just not.
Or you send your kid out there with the hose.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, you want to water in the evening or the early morning before the sun hits, definitely like close to even just the midpoint of the day. I feel like either are fine. Some people have strong opinions.
Don't get it on the plants.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that. You want to water at the base of the plant.
With our irrigation system, which is at ground level, it's a drip system. We water at 8 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m. for 20 minutes at a time every day. And because it is at the soil level, the soil is able to get it at the root zone. You don't want to splash this on the plants for disease purposes, for any kind of reason. It's not doing any good getting it on the plant. You want to get it at the base. And by doing that at the soil level, it's having the opportunity to absorb in and not evaporate out. Watering in pots or containers twice a day on the very warmest days, Holly.
Yeah, at this point, I mean,
these are little ovens.
Yeah, they're little ovens. They dehydrate quickly. They dry out quickly. So what you want to do is you want to water until you see the water come out the bottom, and then you would, if you have a bunch of them, you just start at the beginning, do all of them, wait a few minutes, and then do that again. And then you want to do that twice a day, because they are going to dry out.
Once you think you're done, grab your hand in there and scoop out about 2 inches deep in the container, and it's probably going to be dry, and you're going to have to keep watering until that gets hydrated. With that, and then you can use mulch on your containers.
And we're not talking about bone dry. We mean like
damp.
Like you might think, okay, this is going to be wet enough, and then you put your hand in there a few inches down, and it just kind of feels like semi-dry soil. So you want to make sure it is nice and damp.
Yep.
And you can mulch.
And the smaller the container, the quicker it will dry out. Normal physics there. You got a 55-gallon grow bag that's going to dry out a little slower than a 2-gallon grow pot or terracotta pot. Watering, important for your garden. Just a small snippet. You got questions, send it on over to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
So we are brought to you today by our sponsor, Walton's Inc. We know you care about where your food comes from. Canning and preserving your fruits and vegetables is a great way, but what about the meat? At Walton's Inc., you can get equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. Do you want to make snack sticks that people will actually like? Walton's created meatgistics.com, an informational site to help you make the best finished product. Walton's has everything full line of meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers. They have seasonings. They have a lot of stuff. You can go to waltonsinc.com, use code GROW50 to save 10% off your orders of $50 or more.